You are listening to the Nightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Coming up, we'll talk about America's game, the Army-Navy clash. Joe Miller of the Navy Radio Network will join us once again to break down that contest and more. He is standing by in the virtual green room and will join us in just a few moments. But first, Tulane is your 2022 AAC football champion as they defeated UCF 45-28 in front of their home crowd at Yulman Stadium. Tajay Spears rushed for 203 yards. Michael Pratt threw for 394 and 3 touchdowns, earning Outstanding Player of the Game honors. Here's Green Wave head coach Willie Fritz.
I just, was really proud of our student body and all of our fans. I thought it was an electric atmosphere the whole game. They were loud when they needed to be loud, and it was a great moment for Tulane University and our football program, our athletic department. Just proud to be a part of it. I thought Michael Pratt played outstanding at quarterback. I don't know what his stats were, but he ran and threw the ball very effectively. Tajay had another great game, and when we needed stops defensively, we certainly did it. So, there's a point in there. We almost kind of got the game where I think we would have been totally under control, in control of the game, but we had a fumble, and we fumbled a couple series later, and made it kind of tough on ourselves, but came up with some big plays to win the game. So just very, very proud of this team effort.
UCF rallied in the second half to within 3 points behind injured quarterback John Rice Plumlee, whose injured hamstring forced him out in the first half. Knights head coach Gus Malzahn.
First of all, you got to give Tulane a lot of credit. They're a really good team. We knew that coming in. They played really good. We didn't play our best. I think that's obvious, but they had something to do with that. Proud of our team fighting back. It was really tough. We got off to a tough start. We fought back. I think it was 31-28, and it was right there before us. Give them credit. They went down and scored, and we never could get that momentum back. But we have a bunch of champions. There's 3 guys right here that are winners with a capital W that I'm proud of, that, they led us and got us here.
Tulane's magical season continues as they move on to the New Year's Six to play USC in the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day. 7 AAC teams are in the bowl season. Let's run down that lineup for you now. First, on December 17th, it's the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. And that'll be played at Fenway Park as Cincinnati takes on Louisville. That'll be an 11 a.m. Eastern kick on ESPN. Cincinnati leads the all-time series 30-22, and there's been one tie. Louisville won the last meeting back in 2013. And, of course, some spicy coaching news regarding this game coming up momentarily. The New Mexico Bowl will be played December 17th in Albuquerque at University Stadium as SMU will play BYU. That'll be a 2:15 kick on ESPN. BYU leads the all-time series 3-0 and won the last meeting way back in 1997. The Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl in Shreveport, December 23rd at Independence Stadium, has Houston taking on Louisiana. That'll be a 3 p.m. kick on ESPN. Houston leads the all-time series 6-3. Louisiana won the last meeting back in 2006. The ServPro First Responder Bowl will be played in Dallas at Gerald J. Ford Stadium, home of SMU, on December 27th. Memphis will take on Utah State, a 3:15 kick on ESPN. Memphis leads the all-time series 4-3 and won the last meeting they haven't played since 1977. The Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl, December 27th at Protective Stadium in, where else? Birmingham, has East Carolina taking on Coastal Carolina, a 6:45 kick on ESPN, and a first-time meeting between these two Carolina schools. The Military Bowl, presented by Peraton, December 28th, that'll be played in Annapolis at the Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, and it's UCF battling Duke, a 2 p.m. kick on ESPN in this first-time meeting between those two schools. And, of course, as we mentioned, Tulane is going to the Goodyear Cotton Bowl to be played as part of the New Year's Six on January 2nd at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. The Green Wave will be taking on USC. and that'll be a 1 o'clock kick on ESPN. USC leads this all-time series 2-1. And, of course, you probably remember that USC won the last meeting way back in 1946. Meanwhile, we mentioned the spicy coaching news. Scott Satterfield is leaving Louisville to go to Cincinnati, and, of course, they're playing each other in the bowl game. However, he will not coach either school in that particular thing, although it would have been entertaining because, in the Fenway Bowl, both teams are on the same sideline, so conceivably he could have coached both at the same time if he was really feeling froggy. And other coaching news, Alex Golish has been named the head coach at South Florida. He, of course, was Josh Heupel's top assistant as the OC at Tennessee, and he also served Heupel in that role at UCF. And, of course, Tulsa brings in a new head coach as they hire Ohio State offensive coordinator Kevin Wilson. He has been the OC at Ohio State for 6 seasons as he replaces Philip Montgomery in that particular role. The 2022 AAC Football Awards will go out like this. Of course, the Geico Offensive Player of the Year, Tyjae Spears of Tulane. The Defensive Player of the Year is Ivan Pace of Cincinnati. The linebacker from that school is joined by punter Mason Fletcher as the Special Teams Player of the Year. The Conference Rookie of the Year is E.J. Warner, the quarterback from Temple, and Willie Fritz, of course, the Coach of the Year from Tulane. The first team honors go like this. Wide receivers are Nathaniel Dell of Houston, Rashee Rice of SMU, and Keelan Stokes of Tulsa. The offensive tackles, Ryan Swoboda of UCF, Patrick Paul of Houston. The guards, Paoli of UCF, and Cameron Johnson of Houston, along with Prince Pines of Tulane. The center, Sincere Hayesworth of Tulane. The tight end, Josh Wiley of Cincinnati. The quarterback, Clayton Tune from Houston. The running backs, Keaton Mitchell of East Carolina, Tyjae Spears of Tulane. On the defensive side, the D-line looks like this. Ricky Barber and Tremont Morris-Brash from UCF. Jawan Briggs and Dante Corleone of Cincinnati. D'Anthony Jones of Houston, Darian Varner of Temple. The linebackers, Jason Johnson of UCF, Ivan Pace of Cincinnati, John Marshall from Navy, and Dorian Williams from Tulane. The corners, Jaquan Shepard of Cincinnati and Jarius Monroe of Tulane. The safeties, Quindell Johnson of Memphis, Macon Clark of Tulane. The kicker, Chris Howard from Memphis. The punter, Mason Fletcher of Cincinnati. And the return specialist, Jimmy Horn Jr. from South Florida. Second team goes like this. Wide receivers, Ryan O'Keefe of UCF, Tyler Scott of Cincinnati, C.J. Johnson of East Carolina, and Xavier Weaver of South Florida. Offensive tackles, James Tunstall of Cincinnati, Joey Claybrook of Tulane. The guards, Sam Jackson of UCF, Justin Osborne of SMU. The center, Matt Lee from UCF. The tight end, Caden Priexcom of Memphis. The quarterback, Michael Pratt of Tulane. The running backs, Isaiah Bauer of UCF and Brian Batilla of South Florida. On the defensive side, the defensive lineman, Elijah Chapman of SMU, Darius Hodges of Tulane, Patrick Jenkins of Tulane, and Anthony Goodlow of Tulsa. Linebackers, Xavier Collins of Memphis, Leighton Jordan of Temple, Nick Anderson from Tulane, and Justin Wright from Tulsa. The corners, Malik Fleming of East Carolina, Art Green of Houston. The safeties, Javon Hicks of Cincinnati, Javarius Jones of Houston. The kicker, Ryan Coe from Cincinnati, Casey Glover of Tulane, and Joquan Jackson of Tulane rounds out the second team honors. When we come back, well, there's one more regular season contest involving an AAC team. It is, of course, the Navy Midshipmen as they renew their annual rivalry with Army, the Cadets, to be played Saturday. And Joe Miller of the Navy Radio Network is going to join us to talk about that when the AAC report comes back after this.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Nightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. go Knights, and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com.
All right, time now to talk about America's Game. It's the annual Army-Navy Clash, and joining us to talk about that, we welcome back to the show Joe Miller of the Navy Radio Network. Joe, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
It's great to be here, Jeff. Great to talk about Army-Navy as well.
Yeah, so here we go, another round of this great rivalry. Navy's going into the game at 4-7, Army at 5-6. So first, let's get some of your initial thoughts about the Navy season to date so far.
Well, I think you look at the season for the Mids at this point. I mean, it's been a little bit up and down. Got off to a slow start this season. Against Delaware, that first game of the season. Then Memphis started 0-2. Got the big win against East Carolina. Then I think the season was a couple different avenues to go down, because at times the defense played so well for them this season. It really was a tremendous accomplishment the way this team played at times defensively, but offensively it was just a little bit inconsistent. And then it looked like they had a big win over Temple in overtime, and then they had the gauntlet of at the time we were talking about Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and UCF, and they played in all three of those games. They played really well. And I think that buoyed them and gave them some confidence. Obviously, the last of those three, they picked up the victory against UCF. But in all three of those games, I think they acquitted themselves well. And I think they're carrying in some positive momentum. Granted, it's a weird sort of thing where you're off for 3 weeks before this game. But they've had time to rest. They've been time to and that's very important at service academies. And they've had some time off to sort of figure things out. But I think, like last year, they went into the game last season with a lot of confidence coming off a game against Temple. I think there's even more confidence because of the three teams they played previous to this, and obviously picking up the victory against UCF, which at the time obviously was the top 20 team in the country.
Yeah, and that was a tremendous win. The almost near come from behind against Notre Dame. Cincinnati was a tight game throughout that whole thing. So yeah, they definitely hit their stride going into the end of the season. Now, as you look towards this game with Army, Navy did break a Army losing streak last season, and now looking to make it 2 in a row.
Yeah, and it's an interesting game always, because you get sort of an early season taste because you play Air Force, and obviously the Service Academy games have been, if you look at the Air Force Army games, you look at the Navy Army games, and vice versa, Navy Air Force, they're traditionally, at least in the recent history, been incredibly low scoring games. I mean, you look at the game that Air Force played against Army this season, you look at the Navy Air Force game, that was a 13-10 game, and obviously a low scoring game in the Army Air Force game as well. And so it's really one of those situations where you go into these games and you look at it and you sort of break down the game and try to figure out what's gonna factor in, and it gets a little, I don't know, I guess you look at it sometimes, I think you get a little bit caught up on the sort of the things you always talk about, turnovers, mistakes, things like that. Can really have a huge impact when you're talking about a game that is going to be played basically your average college football game. If you took the service academies out, they're probably going to touch the ball 15 times at least. In this game, you'll be lucky to touch the ball 7 times, And you got to, in those 7 opportunities, if you get that many, you have to be able to not mess up, not make mistakes. I think often this game is really boiled down to who doesn't make mistakes. And I think when you look at the two teams this season, I think you see a similar pattern between these two teams. Now, I don't think this is no shot at Army, but there's no way you can look at Army's schedule and compare it to Navy's this season. Mm-hmm. You know, they have one more win, but the schedules are completely two different schedules. And that's sort of what, you know, Army, as an independent, that's what they can do. Now, they carry some momentum into this game because, you know, they won their last couple of contests, but when you break down these games, these are so two similar teams. But I do think, more than anything, this Navy defense is playing at a higher level than any Navy defense, I think, has come into this game. Now, that doesn't mean success is going to be there, but I feel like when you look at the matchups between these two teams, it was interesting. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, going over the numbers, just looking at the stats and the different metrics that you can use and the different things we talk about. But the one thing that I think stands out more than anything to me, when you talk about, you know, the two defensive teams, is Navy's ability to create havoc, their tackles for loss, the sacks. And when you factor in the competition that they've played, I really think that's their biggest edge coming into this game. Now, with all that said, they basically have to change their entire philosophy defensively headed into this game because they mainly play spread teams. They mainly play teams, as you know, in the AAC that want to spread you out and throw the football a ton, and now they have to adjust what they do, but they prepare for it. And I think, to me, it becomes more of a talent situation more than anything. It's not necessarily, being in the right place at the right time. I mean, that's a part of it, but I think talent can win out. And I look at this Navy defense. It's just hard for me when I size things up against this in this matchup against Army. It's just hard for me to see the Black Knights consistently moving the football. And probably going back to what I said earlier, I mean, it's going to be a lower scoring game, but I just feel like this Navy defense is in a really good spot right now and playing really well. And against the level of competition that they've played against, and going into this game, they have to have a tremendous amount of confidence.
Yeah, you know, and I kind of harken back to the UCF game because that was very interesting. Is the when Mikey King came in the second half, he's the passing quarterback for the Knights, and he marched them right down the field on the first drive. But Navy adjusted immediately, and from my vantage point at the game, you know, they just turned it up on pressuring the quarterback. They just went all in on that.
Oh yeah, I mean that was as well. You take the one drive out of it. You know, obviously, as you mentioned, Keene got the start in the second half. And I think, honestly, they were taken a little bit surprised by that. They weren't expecting that. And I said, when, it happened into the broadcast booth, I said, look, I think this is an advantage Navy in this situation. And Keene comes out, he makes me look stupid, at least on the initial drive, because he goes down the field. But I think they were really preparing for Plumlee, and they didn't want to put a lot of blitzes in the package against Plumlee because they were scared of what he could do with his legs. So they were playing a ton of coverage. They were dropping a lot of guys. And I think when they saw Keene in there, that sort of gave them a green light to say, let's be super aggressive here and go after the quarterback. And it was very much the same situation that happened in the second half of the Notre Dame game, is that they decided to pin their ears back and have try to put up a tremendous amount of pressure. And you saw that in the UCF game. I think not having Plumlee back there, because this – it's one of those things is when you see this, a team over the entire season, they were hurt big time by Mordecai's running in the SMU game. The quarterbacks that they struggled with this season were kind of guys that you wouldn't necessarily think would have big games. But, Tanner Mordecai for SMU, who's not known as a huge runner. He ran for 74 yards and a score against the Mids. They also, in the game that they played earlier in the season against Clayton Tune. Now, he probably has a little bit more running experience. He had a couple big runs inside the red zone against them that were key. So I think that's been the one thing that the matchup-wise that they were scared of in the UCF game. And as soon as Keene came in, now they made an adjustment because Keene went right down the field. But after that drive, the second half against Notre Dame, the second half against UCF, I've been doing Navy football now for closing in on a decade on the broadcast side. Those were the two best halves I've ever seen them play defensively. I mean, Notre Dame couldn't do anything against them in the second half. And really, after that initial drive, UCF really struggled to do anything. And those are two quality offenses. And if you want to look at recruiting rankings, I mean, it's not even, Navy shouldn't be doing anything close to that. And that, to me, is what has carried this team to some extent. Now, the other part of that, Jeff, is the offense has gotten better, and Xavier Arline has come in at quarterback, and that has helped them. They have been a little bit more explosive with him at quarterback, and I think that's part and parcel of what you look at this game. I think the defense is playing at a high level, and the offense has clicked to some degree. It's not perfect. It's not exactly where they want to be, because I think when you look overall, there's still a need for them to be, a little bit more explosive on the offensive side of the football field. But, I think they're in a really good spot coming in this game, and especially on the defensive side of the football field, about what has happened over the last month or so.
And of course, with Army and Navy, besides you getting a well-fought football game, you get a lot of nice little ancillary stories as well. So Navy, the uniforms this year are a space theme. And I tell you what, I consider myself a connoisseur of space uniforms. UCF's done them for 5 years. And in fact, I think the moon helmet that UCF did, I think in their second or third try at this, is like the most beautiful helmet I've ever seen. Now this Navy helmet might be 1B in my book. It's a tremendous uniform.
Yeah, it's funny because earlier this season, not only do I do football games, I do a lot of different sports at the Naval Academy. We do men's and women's soccer, basketball, lacrosse. We do a lot of different things. And Nicole Mann, who's a former Navy soccer player, women's soccer player, earlier this year went up into space, and it's really crazy to think about what these kids do eventually with their careers. And I love the helmets. I think it looks fantastic. Obviously, when we were down in UCF, we obviously saw the all the space stuff down there that associated with UCF, and obviously with Navy, they have a strong history as well. And obviously, a lot of people were excited about the uniforms. And I think they turned out great. I really, it's funny because it's become sort of it's become a tradition now with the Army-Navy game with these uniforms. And it's sort of a conversation when we get to, I remember sitting down, before they were going to do the unveiling a couple weeks before, talking about, the painstaking details that they have to go through with the helmets. I mean, this is a lot of work to put those helmets together. I mean, you think you just, throw on an emblem and you're done with it. It's nothing like that. And it's been an eye-opening experience, but that's part of the tradition. One of the, back in the day, I don't know when it started, but obviously since I was a little kid, you saw the patches that players would wear on the, they would get different, whether it be, different battleships, aircraft carriers, different Marine units that would send badges for players to wear, and the players would be able to pick out certain badges. And I remember that as a kid, and obviously that tradition continues to this day, and it's really cool to see that. And now you have this newest tradition where it's almost keeping up with the Jones, trying to outdo the other team when it comes to these uniforms. And maybe I'm partial, but I really love what the Mids have done over the last couple of years. I love the Blue Angels. The only crazy thing about that was the game that was played in the snow, and Army had all white uniforms, And it honestly, it was one of the few times where it was like, is that a player? Or is that just like snowfall like that? It was one of the few times it was like actual camouflage out there. But I love those uniforms. I love what they did last year with the fly uniforms and these NASA uniforms. I think it's become a really cool tradition that's now part of this game now. I mean, I think almost if one of the teams said, hey, we're just going to wear our regular uniforms, it would be a disappointment. So it's kind of a cool side story. I don't know how many ideas they have like lined up. Like, this is a big process that they have to go that takes months and months of planning. And really they start it, soon thereafter the end of this campaign. So it's a crazy amount of work that they have to go through. And obviously Under Armour, who's Navy's uniform sponsors, they put a lot of thought and energy. And there's Under Armour, most people know this, but it was founded in the state of Maryland. So there's a close connection there to the state. I think it's worked out well, and it's really cool that it's become this side sort of thing with this game, but it's really become part of the tradition that is Army-Navy. Yeah, and we will say, Army's uniforms look pretty slick too. They are honoring their first armored division from World War II. So it's a pretty cool look, and I think this is a great aspect. And and at least Navy's got a lot of different options to choose from, like UCF, because of their close ties with the Kennedy Space Center and all that stuff. They're just kind of focused in on space. At least Navy has other avenues they can go down to at least keep the ideas flowing. But you're right. This is literally the day after the game is when you got to start planning for the next one. I'm sure there's a list somewhere of like all the things that they, that they've come up, they've done the aircraft carriers. They did fly Navy last season. Obviously, as I mentioned, they did the Blue Angels as well. Look, the Naval Academy and the United States Navy really prides themselves. So, I think most people that follow this understand that the Naval Academy also produces, officers for the United States Marine Corps. So they pride themselves on, you can go to the Naval Academy and do anything you want to do. You can fly. You can, be a ground soldier, as obviously in the Marine, and take charge that way. So it's certainly a plenty of options out there, but it's a crazy process, and it's a lot of work to go through all of that. Yeah, that's for sure. So and then what is it I've heard that there's been a secret mission to drop ping pong balls on Army? Yeah, I saw that this morning. I was reading up on it this morning. I didn't see the details on everything, but obviously somebody was able to infiltrate the airspace above West Point, New York, and drop some beat Go Navy beat Army ping pong balls in the area. So they've kind of frowned on in years past. You would hear about the capturing of the mascots. They've kind of frowned on that here in recent history. So I think they're looking to go in some different areas of exploration to sort of to get the juices flowing before the game. Yeah, that's awesome stuff. And of course, the game is being played in Philadelphia, and the game has been played there the most. It has been in New York, in Landover, in other venues. What are kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, you've been to a few of the different venues. Which one is the best one? Tough question, Jeff. Look, I would be remiss if I didn't throw out, obviously, when we play in Baltimore, it's a little bit closer to me. Mm-hmm. But look, I love it in Philadelphia. I really do. It's going to be interesting next year. It's going to be in Foxborough, which has never hosted the Army-Navy game. So they're going to move it around here. It'll be Philly, Foxborough, Baltimore, D.C., or is it D.C., Baltimore? I get confused over the next couple. I'm very much a week-to-week guy, Jeff, so but I love it in Philadelphia. I'm a big proponent of history when it comes to college football. I love the history of the game. I love the history of this country, and I love the history associated with college football, because you're really talking about a series and an event that's taken place. This will be the 123rd meeting. You don't really get that in American sports too much. So I love the history of this game, and I love, the aspect of the historical significance of the city of Philadelphia for these two institutions, and going back to the history and the scene, obviously the tremendous games that were being played in Philadelphia. And look, I love the location of the when I think of the games, I think of the amenities and everything, and it's perfect. It's spotless. It is fantastic, and I love the fact that the tradition that has this game in Philadelphia, you can trace its roots to Philadelphia, and I think that's what makes it special. But look, we were in New York last season. I thought they did a tremendous job. We were in Baltimore earlier this year for the Notre Dame game. We have a great relationship with Ravens Stadium. It's the best location for a broadcast you could ask for, and I've done games up in Foxborough, and I'm looking forward to going back up there. Obviously, it'll be new to be up there, so that'll be a little bit different. Obviously, the travel concerns are a little bit different there, but I think Philadelphia sort of fits. It's basically in between both places, so you get that. You don't get the advantage of being closer, like in New York for Army or in Baltimore for Navy. So, I just love the tradition of it, and it's always a great event. And it seems like it fits best there,
Yeah, interesting. I do know at one time Florida Citrus Sports had tried to land the Army-Navy game down here, which I think would have been tremendous. There used to be a Navy base here in the Metro Orlando area and stuff like that, and obviously, military is pretty spread out throughout the state of Florida.
I think Orlando was part of the last. The Charlotte was in the mix. There was a couple other places that were in the non-traditional list. I think the biggest factor there is getting all the midshipmen and getting the Corps of Cadets to that place in that location. I'll be interested to see how they do it for Boston, because I would imagine, I don't know for sure whether they'll have to fly everybody up. I mean, it's from here, it's probably about 8 to 10 hour car ride to Boston, which might be a much. Obviously with those, in the 80s they had it in the Rose Bowl, which is obviously a unique situation. So I know some non-traditional areas have bid for it, and I think the excitement level that this game has brought to, I really think Philadelphia was disappointed that they're sharing it a little bit more than what they have in the past. I think that's good for both these programs and both these institutions. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see with the college football playoff changing over the next couple of years. If it changes sort of the date, if it's a standalone game going forward, I don't know that as of right this second. Obviously, that stuff still has to be worked out. We're a few years away from the expanded playoff, so that could change things as far as the date is concerned. But look, I love the fact that it's the one college football game that you get to watch. Look, I'm partial. I understand that, but I think it's cool for these institutions to have that limelight.
Yeah, I hope they can maintain that for sure. And then it might be kind of cool. Maybe they do a scenario where Philadelphia, maybe every third or fourth year they take it out of Philadelphia and let someone else experience it, but still keep that roots type of thing in the city of Philly. Maybe that would be a cool answer. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in 2020, obviously the pandemic forced the game to West Point. That was a different experience for all of us because we've never been there for a football game. Then, of course, last year was in New Jersey and East Rutherford. So it's the first time it's been back in Philly since 2019. And obviously, it had it's been in Baltimore. I think 2016, 2014 was in Baltimore. Look, it's got a special connection to the city of Philadelphia, and they treat us really well. So wherever we go, I'll be there.
Yeah, and I think Roger Staubach is always there, no matter where the game is, too. I think.
Well, he was. It's crazy. The '63 game is one of the hallmark games in the series, and obviously they won it that year, 21-15. those years where those two teams were playing, not only for obviously Heisman trophies and Army-Navy game, but, playing for Cotton Bowls, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so I was mentioning to you before we started recording the segment that, I'm coming up for UCF's bowl game against Duke in Annapolis, and I was thankful that we're not having to play Navy because the midshipmen have had the Knights number the last couple of years, and it also got me thinking too when I've been to both Navy games here in Orlando, and what really is interesting because you get a good turnout of Navy fans because so many people have been in the military either before college or after college. So you have UCF guys who are Navy guys too. It's really kind of an interesting aspect in a football game.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the crazy things about traveling with this team is not only that there's a lot of support that you get, and most of it's friendly. You don't every now and then you'll get the occasional heckle now and then, but it's crazy. I don't know what it's like going with other teams, but traveling on the bus, getting off the bus, I mean, it's always pretty friendly. And we always have a good traveling crowd because not only, obviously people follow this as a national school, but, the Naval Academy and the football team draws a lot of players from a lot of different areas. So you have a wide variety of people being able to travel to road games, family, if they're from the Florida area or the Georgia area or something like that, can get to the game. And, that's a cool part of this, on the road with this team is, we go to a lot of places where, quite frankly, our crowd is almost as good as some of the other places that, as far as the home crowds go. So I think that's a cool aspect. And obviously they, with the AAC changing, one of the things that they talked about was when with the realignment was, Florida and Texas was still very vital to this school as far as recruiting and getting a chance to play in those areas still because of the ability to draw fans to those areas and obviously still have an input and impact in the area with some of the teams that are leaving the AAC. And I think that was important. Obviously, I don't think it drove realignment. They weren't asking Navy when and where you would like to, draw the schools from. But I think it was important that some of those markets are still going to be covered going forward in the new AAC.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting from that aspect. And of course, I remember following Navy pretty closely. When Craig Candido was the quarterback, he was a DeLand High School graduate, which where I went to high school. So you always find these little ties.
Craig Candido scored 6 touchdowns in an Army-Navy game.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. made a lot of us proud down here. That's for sure. So. I think you do hit an interesting aspect that it is a little bittersweet to leave the AAC from my vantage point. I hope we never forget where we came from, to go to the Power Five because the being in the American helped our program develop, and it was a good relationship for both the conference and UCF, and I think the other schools in the conference have benefited from that as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, and I think that, like I was talking to you before, I think losing UCF and Cincinnati and Houston to, especially UCF and Cincinnati, to me, those were two of the places that we went that obviously had the best environments for college football. And it's not taken away from some of the other schools. It was just, in the time and place that we were, going there. I mean, the first year we were in the AAC we played Thanksgiving weekend on a Friday at Houston for the conference title. I mean, that place was crazy. That was earlier in my tenure, but I mean, Houston stormed the field after they beat us, and to put that in context, in our first year in the AAC, it was hard for me to understand that any team would be storming the field after they beat us for a conference championship. It just wasn't part of the thought process, and to see those teams, look, I hope the best. Navy is not in a situation where we're looking at the fact that it wasn't our opportunity, or we're getting the shaft here. They don't look at like that from that perspective. I think they've really enjoyed the partnership with those teams in the AAC. And I think for UCF and for Cincinnati, for Houston, obviously to go and play in those places with big environments, I think has been cool and a great part of the AAC experience. And I think, losing that is going to be, we'll recover. It'll be fine. But I think that's the sad part of seeing those teams leave is that some of the big games that we had and some of the big game environments that we played. I mean, the Navy UCF games, even the first time they played in Annapolis, Mackenzie Milton got banged up in that game, came back in, led them and got the victory. And obviously last year we beat them in Annapolis, and going back to Orlando this year to pick up the upset victory. Cincinnati the first year was under Luke Fickell. We ran for like 580 yards against them and had our way. And then obviously they've been fantastic the last couple of years. And we've had some big games with Houston. We beat the Cougars when they were number 5 in the country with De'Ara King and company, and beat them 46-40 in a crazy game when Tom Herman had them in the top 10. And obviously, as I mentioned, that first season, we played them for the AAC West Division title. So there's some great memories there. There's still some really good teams left over. I think Tulane's winning the conference is a great story.
It is.
And, looking forward to some of the new teams. I'm looking forward to seeing UTSA. I think they're going to be a fantastic team. And honestly, all the best to UCF and Cincinnati and Houston. It's, I think, going forward, I think it's going to be a good conference. I still think even with the new teams, you'll see how they assimilate. It's going to be for some of those teams, it's going to be a rough start. But I still think of the conferences outside the Power 5, I don't think you're going to get a better one than the AAC.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. So, all right, let's get one final thought about the game on Saturday. America's game, Army and Navy. What you got for me there? I love us. I think defensively, I think we're going to be hard to go against. I mean, I really think it's going to be another lower scoring type of ball game. But I think Navy's ability, to hit a couple big plays here and there is going to be crucial. And I think Navy's defense has been fantastic all season long. I think they'll be fantastic again. I'll take the mids. Let's go 21-7. 21-7. There, you heard it here first. And of course, Joe, I always have to ask you. I need to have it. It's the old Go Navy beat Army.
Go Navy beat Army.
All right, Joe. As always, my man. Thank you so much for the time. I certainly appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks so much. Good luck going forward with everything.
Of course, Joe and his broadcast partner Pete Medhurst, who does the play-by-play, will actually do national radio for UCF's bowl game against Duke. So if you're not able to listen to Mark Daniels locally and you're outside of our Orlando market, you can catch the national broadcast with Joe and Pete wherever that will air and in your markets where the national play-by-play will be broadcast. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about volleyball, the NCAA tournament, that and more when we come back on the AAC Reports.
If you haven't figured it out yet, I love Tijuana Flats. I would love them even if they weren't a partner with us on the Nightline Sports Network. They have all kinds of great Tex-Mex food, and it's fresh, by the way. Made to order burritos, tacos, enchiladas, chimichangas, quesadillas, bowls, nachos, and taco salads. And if you haven't tried the queso, you are completely missing out. It is the best queso that I've ever had in my life. Absolutely hands down. And the sauce bar that they have, everything from wild to mild in there. Absolutely awesome, awesome stuff. Not only do I love the food at Tijuana Flats, but I love the company, a UCF-born company. And they give back to the community with the Justin Queso Foundation. So head to your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. Hey Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up the menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
In volleyball, Houston has advanced to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. They survived a wild 5-set win over South Dakota in the opening round and then picked up the team's 7th win in 5-set matches this season when they bested Auburn on Saturday night in 5 sets in the second round in Omaha. UCF made it to the second round by sweeping Yale, but were bested in round 2 in 4 sets by the home team in the tournament, Penn State, which brought their season to an end. Turning to college basketball, Houston ranked number 1 in the AP Top 25, the USA Today Coaches Poll, and the NCAA Net rankings. Memphis is receiving votes in both polls. The Cougars earned 37 first-place votes in the AP Top 25 and 21 in the Coaches Poll. The Player of the Week in men's hoops, Khalif Battle of Temple, led the Owls to 2 victories last week, averaging 24.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2 steals per contest. The Freshman of the Week, for the 3rd time this year, is Taylor Hendricks of UCF. He scored 21 points in a win over Stanford on Saturday, 6 of 7 from the field, including 4 of 5 from three-point land. The Players of the Week in women's basketball. Sammy Puisis Jr. of South Florida, instrumental in their win over number 22 Texas in Austin. The junior transfer scored 25 points and 10 of 19 shooting from the field, including 5 from beyond the arc. The co-player of the week is Jasmine Smith of SMU. Helped them to a 3-0 weekend, averaging 17.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 4 assists per game for the week. The freshman of the week is R.A. Young of Tulsa. Helped them to a 2-0 week with wins over Duquesne and Lindenwood. Double figures in both games, 12 points coming up in that game against Lindenwood. And turning to swimming, the athletes of the week are as follows. The women's swimming athlete of the week, Lucrezia Napolitano of SMU. Nicole Stambo, the senior from SMU, is the women's diving athlete of the week. The men's swimming athlete of the week, Angus Corbeau of SMU, and also of SMU. They have swept all the awards in swimming and diving. Dominic Heffer, a senior from SMU. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this week's program. We take a little bit of a holiday break and then coming back with more talk about college hoops after the first of the year and also some bowl game wrap-ups. And, of course, we'll pop a podcast if any breaking news from around the conference warrants such action. As always, please follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88 and the Nightline Sports Network at UCF_Nightline. This has been the AAC Report only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Happy holidays.